I've been getting this question a lot from different people, and they would ask me, well, if you were to seed a tournament today, how would you seed it? And so presumably we're talking about a tournament where the biggest names are there. And if we're to just run down the quick list, this is going to be a short video. I think number one is Hungrybox, and despite the fact that he lost to Plub, I think he's had such a strong stranglehold over the bracket that that it'd be asinine to drop him anywhere below one. I don't know if anyone has a case right now to contest that spot. So Hungrybox at number one is pretty straightforward. I don't think there's any argument there. Number two and number three are pretty interesting. Actually, any order of the two through five, in my opinion, are very interesting. Mainly because it depends on how much you value recent results and how much you value like legacy and how far you go back. Normally, Armada would be a shoo-in for top two. But with recent results, you could debatably put Plup there in number two with a second place at Big House and a first place at Genesis 5. So I just think that with those two big super majors, although he did, fumble around a bit at at Smash Summit, I think it's pretty reasonable that you could put Plup at number two. And then for number three and number four, it's actually pretty interesting. You can either probably put Armada or Leffen, depending on what you value. I think the fact that Leffen beat Armada at Valhalla and then Leffen outperforming Armada at Genesis warrants that Leffen, you can argue that Leffen should be ahead of Armada. And that'd be perfectly okay. If you might say, well, Armada's history is better, then you can say, well, Armada deserves the third seed based on legacy. And that's perfectly okay too. But for me personally, just because it's unfortunate that we haven't had a lot of events lately, but I would nudge to give Leffen the slight edge for now and put Leffen at number three and Armada at number four. But once again, you can swap them and it's perfectly fine. At number five, I think it's Mango. I think it's pretty straightforward. Now, Mango's kind of struggled against the other members of the Big Six if you look at the last 6 months. But so I think out of them, I think he's clearly ahead of Mutaking. I think Mutaking, other than Canada Cup, if you look at his results and his set counts and his head-to-heads, is the worst out of the Big Six. And so I think Mango you could comfortably slot at number five, which makes it a very interesting bracket where Hungrybox, Armada, and Mango are all potentially on one side of the bracket, which is kind of crazy because one of the biggest advantages you could have as the top seed, and this was more true in the past, was this was when Plup, Leffen, and Mutaking weren't as strong as they are now. Like whoever got the first seed between Armada, Hungrybox, and Mango had a huge advantage in brackets because they would avoid, like the person in first seed would avoid the other two, and back then Leffen and Plup weren't as strong, so like person with first seed would have a significantly easier route to winners finals as opposed to the other two players. But now it's going to be really interesting because Armada's a really good player, but him being in the fourth slot and having to play Mango in winners quarters and then potentially Hungrybox in winners semis makes his bracket really hard. And I don't really see for a while until he raises up his seeding again for him to consistently get top two anymore, just because it's so hard. The next one, so that puts Mango at 5, and I mentioned Mutaking at 6, but this is going to sound like a shocker and counterintuitive to what most people would likely think. I actually think that there is a case that you could soon, not now, you can argue that if Axe does better than Mutaking at another bracket, that you could conceivably put Axe at number 6 for seeding and put Mutaking at 7. It sounds a little bit weird, but Axe not double eliminated, but Axe beat Mutaking at Smash Summit in pools and in losers, and Axe has overall performed pretty much better than Mutaking the last few tournaments, so that I usually go by the rule of 3. So if Axe, outperforms Mutaking at the next tournament, I think you have to give Axe the nudge over Mutaking in terms of seeding. But for now, I think it's pretty safe to put Mutaking at number 6 and Axe at number 7. And frankly, to be honest, It makes a little bit of a difference. I guess number 6 and number 7 seed, like you might get a slightly easier winners round of 16, and in winners quarters, it basically determines whether or not you play Plup or Leffen. I guess so. Plup and Leffen are both hard opponents, but I think if you're Muti King, you really want the 6 seed so that you can play Leffen. Although Muti King lost to Leffen last time, I think he would greatly prefer playing Leffen than Plup. And then for number 8, I think it's Wizzy. And then I think Wizzy has by far better results than everybody else below him. So those are my top 8 seeds. And then once you go past that, like I haven't really done a terrible amount of research, but you could probably put like SVET, Crush, Amsa, Duck, a bunch of people. Even like Zane can go up there too in terms of like that weird like 9 to 15 zone. You can put a bunch of people there, or not a bunch. You could put like 5 to 6 people, like at 9 to like 13, and depends on what you want for brackets. So those are my current seating, and this is pseudo my like power rankings of right now. And those are just my thoughts on bracket. And so for people who are wondering like who I think should be seated number 1, number 2, these are my thoughts, and it's gonna be interesting. Usually, like I get a preview of what the summit seating is, and I usually say like this is what I think. They usually go with their own, but they usually have me sanity check it. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens at Full Bloom up ahead, and see how the seeding pans out for Smash Summit.